What's going on, everybody? Thanks so much for stopping by another live episode of Real Estate Titans. I'm your host, Greg Fowler, traveling throughout the marketplace, interviewing the top real estate professionals in our field, from realtors, lenders, builders, developers, residential or commercial, essentially gathering insight, inspiration, really drives and motivates these top producers above and beyond everybody else in what I'd like to consider a real estate titan. Our very special guest and featured titan for today, Adam Contos. Adam, I was going to shake your hand, but let's fist bump it out.
There you go.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're super busy. The CEO of RE/MAX, everybody. I'm absolutely humbled and honored to have you today.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, Greg. And welcome to our studio. We're glad to have you here at RE/MAX headquarters.
It is beautiful. I was just walking into the front lobby. I'm thinking, wow, this place is amazing. This studio, absolutely fantastic. I want to give a big shout out to Tom with all the lighting and all the help. So thank you, Tom, if you're watching back there. But I do want to dive in, Adam, really to the series of questions for everybody to get to know you deeper as a man, as a professional, and really what RE/MAX is all about, if that's all right.
Of course.
So I guess let's just dive in.
Right.
Let's start with telling everybody a little bit about yourself.
Wow, okay. So born in Ohio.
Okay.
And moved around a little bit. Got to Colorado here when I was about knee-high, so just a little bitty thing.
Okay.
And grew up here. In fact, I used to ride my bike where this building is.
Get out of
here
here.
today. So grew up very, very close by. Went to school here. My father was worked for the federal government.
Oh.
Mom raised us at home, so it was fantastic.
Cool.
So basically, the day after I graduated high school, I was off to the Marines. So I needed a challenge. I needed to kind of get my life straight. So I went off to Marine Corps boot camp. Everybody else was going, "Hey, what are you doing today?" We're going to a party. I go, "I'm going to boot camp."
A
So
little bit of a different path here, right?
A little bit. So kind of participated in that aspect of the world. And I was intrigued with law enforcement. My dad was in federal law enforcement.
Okay.
That's really all I knew, is his cousins, uncles, his father, things like that were all in law enforcement. So that's what I wanted to do when I, got to the age where I could.
Sure.
So once I was old enough, I went to police academy and started my law enforcement career. So
Wow.
It's kind of neat. I dabbled in college, if you will, if you
Okay.
want to call it that.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I'm a college dropout.
Hey.
But
Look at where you're at right now,
well,
Adam.
welcome to the business, right?
Yeah.
And then I did eventually go back to get my MBA.
Okay.
So it kind of comes full circle. It's a lot easier to do it the first time though.
Unreal.
But kind of worked my way up through law enforcement. Did 11 years full time in law enforcement, and have a lot of fun, interesting stories to tell on that.
Yeah, I mean, would you mind elaborating a little bit? Because from your past to today, that's quite a progression, right? So
It is, yeah.
give us a little bit of that.
All right, so I was a street cop. I was hired to be a street cop.
Okay.
Got on the SWAT team and started doing that. Worked undercover narcotics for 2 years.
Wow.
So that was fun. Every day was a new adventure because we'd go water skiing in the morning or jet skiing in the morning and then go to the narcotics unit and work all afternoon through the night, and then we would serve warrants at night after that.
Wow.
So then we'd get up in the morning and go do the whole thing over again. So I'd buy drugs and looked the part, if you will. So
Depending, can you imagine Adam with a wig and a beard or something that was going on? That'd be so
I didn't wear a wig,
Okay.
but I had a really rockin' mullet for a while.
Oh, I love it.
So yeah, it was great. But I mean, it was fun. It was the '90s.
Sure.
We had a blast. We did some crazy stuff, and you're going, holy smokes! It's like stuff you'd see on Cops or whatever.
Yeah.
But did that. Kind of worked my way up through law enforcement. Ended up running a SWAT team and patrol teams. That was really, really insightful. Really test your leadership because realistically, and it's a lot like just being an entrepreneur, running a business, things like that.
Right.
Nobody's coming to help you to solve these problems. You have to figure them out yourself.
Wow.
And apply thought process, things of that nature. So it was just a great adventure growing up and making my way through my first career and on to RE/MAX.
Okay, yeah. So from that transition onto getting involved in RE/MAX and then to the position you are today,
Yep.
what's that look like for everybody?
So I've always been an entrepreneur. I had an online police supply company that I started in the 90s, which was not the right time to have an online company when you're selling to the government, or trying to at least, because it wasn't happening at that point. Shut that down. I started a security consulting company, and I started doing a lot of homeland security consulting. I was a counterterrorism instructor through training and application, and did a lot of different types of things like that, executive protection and such. So I saw this need in real estate to create a real estate agent safety program. And what I was doing is I was teaching police academy classes. I taught police academy for about 6 years, taught SWAT schools, sniper schools, and I looked at the principles of how you keep a police officer alive on the street, awareness, avoidance, de-escalation, response, taking the gun and the handcuffs and things like that out of it. But a lot of that applies to real estate agents, to particularly the awareness aspect and the response aspect in order to be safe in doing your job. Real estate agents were making these tactical errors on the street and becoming victims as a result. So I created a program, and RE/MAX bought it from me. So I started consulting to RE/MAX. Kind of eventually, I got a call from Dave Liniger one day, and he said, "Hey, you're working with us for about the past year. Why don't you come work for us full time?" I said, "I have the best job in law enforcement. I'm having a blast. I'm a SWAT guy. I've got my security consulting company. You guys are one of my customers." And he goes, no, really, why don't you come try this? And I said, okay, I'll give it a go.
Just like that.
Worked my way up through the company.
Okay. And what was it like in the transition from, working your way through and learning and growing and obviously applying your knowledge of leadership and basis into that, into the real estate world, and you being a CEO now? What's that like for you? I mean, excited about it, daunting task, every day is different. What's it like for you in the day in the life? Right?
It's a combination of all three of those things. It's exciting, it is daunting, it's a huge responsibility. You have to care about so many people. Wow. I mean, we care so greatly about our brokers. They run the amazing offices that our agents have the opportunity to come to or not come to every day.
Sure.
In this business, your customer or your asset walks out the door every single day, and it's your job to have provided enough value that day to get them to come back tomorrow.
Well said.
So, that's a lot to consider, and that requires us to ensure that we value them so greatly and deliver value to them on a regular basis to get to the agents and help grow their business as much as we can. That's why we say we're a business that builds businesses.
Wow. Yeah, and to me that makes perfect sense into who you are and what you represent out in the marketplace. I think this is a beautiful segue for everybody to really switch over to what's your why, right? Because I love that kind of bleed in for it. So Adam, really, truly, you're super busy. You're all over the world doing what you do, running one of the most amazing companies in real estate. But what motivates you? What drives you? What gets you out of bed in the morning to do what you do to the level that you do it at?
I think simply put, I love to help people. I mean, that's what our business is helping people. That's what being in law enforcement is helping people. Being a public servant or an entrepreneur. If you're not in it to help people, to help somebody on the other side of whatever transaction you're involved in, you're in it for the wrong reason. It can't be self-serving. It has to be giving. It has to be selfless. And that's what gets me out of bed every morning, is the opportunity to help people, to make a difference in lives.
Okay. Yeah,
So
and obviously
that's my why.
Yeah, and there's no greater why. I mean, you're really putting it above and beyond you as a person. I mean, and everybody that's around you in your life, right? That includes your family, and everybody that's a part of the RE/MAX family is ultimately really driving that why even further, and it shows, right? All the people that I know, all my buddies that are out there, hopefully they're watching through other RE/MAX agents. They've only said but amazing things about you, Adam. So, I mean, your reputation thus far is impeccable, and I'm super excited to get to know you a little bit more into it, just like everybody else. So, going into the next question, this is one of the crowd pleasers, and this is the advisory portion, right? So, a lot of the seasoned professionals or newer professionals that are watching or listening to the series, they want to know what the Titans do to grow, to expand, to scale their businesses. So obviously, you being in the position that you're in, you see so many different professionals, major teams, individual producers, broker owners, things like that. So if there's some advice that you could give out there about taking your business from one level to the next, what does that look like for you? What did you do? What have you done?
It's an interesting question, because it's not as much a what you do, it's a what you become. And Jim Rohn, I think, put it best, is success is not something that you do, it's something you become by the things that you do. So it's a lifelong journey. It's not a destination.
Right.
So I believe that every day. I have to, just like everybody else, sort through all the noise, all the obstructions that occur on a daily basis that can cause you to become reactionary, that can, where the urgent overrides the important. And truly, what the important is helping you become more, so that you're becoming more not for yourself, you're becoming more for others.
Right.
And that repays over and over again in life. So, kind of that never-ending give that you have to participate in. So what does that look like, I guess, is the bigger question,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So it has to do with not what you say yes to, but what you say no to. Because you have to remove those items that prevent you from learning every day, from being a better you. Because we're just not good at business. We're not doing business.
Sure.
We're creating the whole package here. So when you think about, every day you wake up, you have an opportunity to create this amazing package for that day, and that package is your entire life. It's what you learn, it's how you treat yourself, it's how you treat others, it's how you treat your business, it's how you give unconditionally. It is a holistic package that, there are probably 7 or 8 different aspects of your life that you have to work on.
Right.
But you can't neglect any of them. You have to, everybody says life balance. No, it's life effort is what it is.
That's awesome.
So that's what I look at. And I know it's a little bit vague, but
No.
I'm sure you'll dig deeper into it.
No, and I love that because, and I think that the biggest source is the continuous nature, right? So you have to look at the end goal, right? Do some reverse engineering is what I'm kind of reading into. If this is what you want, you have to try to do the best you can to plan that out, remove any barriers that might be in the way from stopping you from hitting those goals. But at the end of the day, you have to take action. It's
Right.
one step at a time. It's one activity at a time. And a continuance, it's not so much, to me, in my opinion, what I'm reading through, it's not so much those big milestones that happen from time to time throughout our lives. It's all the little details in between that really matter, that really get you to that point. And I love that you're saying that. There's so many takeaways and positive natures for everybody, but it can feel overwhelming for a lot of people, right? I get it.
Right.
So I think that that's a huge perspective to go into. So any systems, any ideas, things like that you see other professionals utilizing or doing that you would recommend just for growth for business, or obviously besides what you had mentioned?
So it's, you said the magic word, systems. Okay? If life is not about goals, goals are destinations that people label in their lives.
Sure.
Truly what impacts you the most are the systems that you're implementing on a daily basis, the steps that you take. For instance, I wanted to become the CEO
Right.
of a company, okay? You just don't go become a CEO.
No, you
all right?
don't.
It doesn't just happen.
Right.
So, and part of that was I didn't have my college degree.
Sure.
And so I was told, well, you kind of need an MBA in order to do that.
Right.
So going and getting my MBA wasn't a goal of mine. It was part of the process.
Love it.
So all I did was I built that process into my day. I was still working full time. I was running marketing. I was running business development. At the end of that, I became the chief operating officer, things like that. But ultimately, it boiled down to how do I just add these steps, these different systems into my day in order to, during that part of the journey, end up executing on what I needed to in order to get the MBA.
Okay.
So it wasn't I'm going to go get my MBA. It was, no, this is just now this many days a month or whatever, I'm driving over to the campus instead of going to my kid's soccer game or something like that.
Right.
And then in the evenings, it's go lock yourself in a room and do your work instead of whatever else you were going to fill that time with.
Wow.
So it's just, it's building the systems into your day in order to become who you want to become.
I love that.
So it's never ending. You know, I guess it ends the day that you close your eyes forever.
That's right.
And then you go, all right, did I do what I wanted to do?
And I think that that's a huge reflection not a lot of us want to think about, but that last day that you do close your eyes, at least to the professionals and the most successful people in the world, it's what did I leave behind? What impact did I leave in the communities and with my family and in the markets and what I'm doing? And what everything that you're saying makes perfect sense to any of the entrepreneurs and any of the top tier professionals. It's really that consistency in nature. I do want to throw a quick shout out, and I know we're going to go into it deeper, but you have an amazing podcast. So if anybody's not subscribed to this podcast or listening to this, it's absolutely phenomenal. Start with a win. And there's a lot of wonderful, amazing pieces of nuggets and interviews that are on there. And so if you like a little bit of what Adam's saying, you're going to get a whole lot of that in the podcast. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's just, it's absolutely phenomenal. I do want to go on to the next portion of this, and hopefully everybody wrote that down, took crazy notes. And again, as I always say, you can reach out to Adam, but he's a very, very busy man. So if you want any questions, that sort of thing, I'm sure you'll get back to as soon as you can. But this is the tricky part of this particular series and interview. It's the challenge question. So I always lead into it with, we all have struggles, we all have challenges in our lives. No one's exempt, whether it's in the past, now, or into the future. That's just the way that it is, but not so much what happens, but how we respond that makes a difference. So if you're comfortable sharing a challenge, it's not easy airing your stuff out in front of everybody, but a challenge that you dealt with in your life that you overcame, became stronger because of it. What's that look like for you, Adam?
I've been through a lot of those, Greg. Anything from I lost a partner. I've been through a divorce. Financial troubles before. I've been injured. I was airlifted one time for an injury. I can list a number of challenges that I've been through. A number, all the way up to business challenges. It's
right.
You look at we did a brand refresh a few years ago that took, a year, 2 years, whatever it was, where every time you turn a corner on this business challenge, you come into more obstacles, or you're like, all right, let's go back and retest this. We tested with tens of thousands of agents, the public, things like that. All of those things are challenges. But it's not the challenge that is in front of you that causes the biggest adaptation to your life. It's how you look at the opportunity on the other side of that. And I remember when I broke my jaw in half one time, and I'm sitting there in the emergency room, and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna have to have surgery." I'm like, "All right, let's go for it." It's you just gotta put the challenge behind you and say, can you make me look any better? I don't know. Make the most of the situation, regardless of what it is.
Sure.
And I know people may be looking for a little bit more from me for that, but ultimately, it's a mind game.
Okay.
These massive challenges, while they seem insurmountable when you're in the middle of them, whether it is a financial problem, a family matter, maybe you're dealing with depression or addiction or what have you,
Sure.
You got to stop and take a breath and say, I've made it through all the challenges up to this point in my life. I'm going to make it through this one too. And it is just take the first step, take the next step, take the next step. You get injured, okay? I'm going to be the best injured person on the planet, and I'm going to rehab the daylights out of myself, and I'm going to come out on the other side better than I was before I got injured.
Wow.
You got to make that decision.
Sure.
And that is you talk about challenges. That is probably the biggest challenge in society today is people become victims when they hit a challenge.
Well said.
I choose not to be a victim. So how am I going to come out better on the other side of this than I was before I got into it? That's my answer to that.
Okay.
And that is, that's how I deal with the next challenge, whatever it might be.
I think that's such a positive mentality and mindset that you had mentioned in there, because you threw a lot of information out to us and a lot of challenges that we all frequent and deal with. But again, you don't look at the victim side and you say, hey, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this and keep moving forward? Now, I've heard you say several times on the podcast and just through other interviews that are going on is failing forward. Right. And I not that we would wish anything ill upon ourselves or family trials or troubles or tribulations, but that's a learning experience. It really is. And it's not to say, oh, get over it, be stronger, right? Some of these things are really tough to deal with, but you really have to do the best you can for reflection, and then realize that somebody else is going through that same thing, right? We're all human. We all have that condition in nature, and if we can just come together and say, it's all right. A lot of times when people reach out or they extend themselves out in nature, right, to say, this is what I went through, you have no idea how impactful that is and how many other people are dealing with that same thing. So it really does matter. I think communication is important, but then that mindset is everything. Reach out to other people and don't be afraid of it, because we all deal with challenges. I think you're...
I want to jump a little bit more in that, because what you're alluding to a little bit, and for everybody out there, this is really important to understand. You don't have to face your life challenges alone. You need to be able to lean on other people as well. And I think that's important. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are still first responders. There's a high suicide rate in that. I have 125,000 friends who are in real estate. There's a high challenge rate in that every single day to go out and make a living. You're an entrepreneur. You eat what you kill. And life is hard sometimes for everybody. I have 3 teenagers. The teenage depression and teenage suicide is at an all-time high right now.
Wow.
So we gotta help each other. We have to recognize this with each other, but we also have to recognize this within ourselves, that, yeah, you're gonna face challenges, but you can do it. You can make it through this and get past this. Just lean on whoever you need to lean on. Hit the, it's too bad we're not born with a reset button.
Yes.
Right?
Well said.
I mean, that would be the most amazing thing, is you're like, all right, I'm getting, the computer locking up here. It's not working. I need to hit the reset button or unplug it and turn it back on, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But realistically, there is a reset button for your brain. You can adjust how you feel about things, because you can't be happy and sad at the same time.
Right.
You can't have those two opposing emotions at the same time.
Impossible.
No, you're absolutely right. Whenever I feel like I'm facing a challenge that I can't get over, I'll put on motivational tapes. I'll read something. I'll write down my gratitudes.
Love it.
It's hard to be pissed off at somebody when you're writing how grateful you are for them.
Huge. These are huge nuggets.
So I think that's incredibly important, and I think it is a winner's mindset. I had Ryan Harris, who he protected Peyton Manning during the Super Bowl. Played the offensive line for the Broncos. I had him on the podcast, and he wrote a book. And he had his saying was, "I am, I can, I will." And he just kept saying that to himself. And he went through challenges. He had, like, I think it was 9 or 11 injuries or something like that, and he fought through them, and he kept saying, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back. I'm going to be stronger than I was before. He had to have a support group. He had to have somebody to look at. He would listen to music or motivation or read things, whatever. But he had the same exact mindset that I'm talking about right now. And I think the top achievers, the top performers in the world all think the same way. And if you want to make a shift in your mindset and go, okay, I'm gonna add to my mind what some of these top performers have, or refine. You're probably already a top performer if you're thinking about this, but if you're going to refine it, focus on that. Really draw that out and enlighten it, and make it part of your day. Make those gratitudes part of your day. Make the morning, the morning rituals. We hear Hal Elrod talk about Miracle Morning.
Oh, yeah.
Part of that is being thankful, meditation, quiet time, exercise, things like that put you in that mindset to say, I'm going to overcome these challenges. So circling back around, there is a reset button on the brain, and that's what it is.
I love that. And everybody, you heard this from Adam Contos directly. I mean, this is the reality situation. And I love the fact that you're talking about everything that you mentioned, and we are all able to hit that reset button, but I think that you alluded to it earlier as balance. And everything that you had mentioned into that Miracle Morning, it is balance. And it's a constant thing. It's a long-term growth, as you had mentioned as well. It is not a destination, it's a journey. This is huge, huge stuff. I want to shift gears on this particular question to go into One that is actually, everybody's really excited about this one because there's a lot of reflection onto their own lives when it's the travel back in time portion. And no one has a crystal ball, no one has a time machine except for Doc Brown in the movie Back to the Future. But when you're looking at it, if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice or two, what would you say to young Adam?
I don't know that it's one piece of advice, but I'd like to play this movie for him.
Okay.
Of here's a definition of the mindset. Here's a definition of opportunity versus challenge. And you know, there are a lot of books out there that we've read, and I know we'll get into those.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But there are a lot of books out there that describe these different things that essentially, you know, over the past probably 2 decades, this information has been extracted from high-performing business leaders. And I would have told myself, don't settle.
Wow.
Don't settle for what you think you are. Go out and figure out what you can become.
I love that.
And that's what these books define. That's what these high-performing business leaders of current time have been able to describe for us.
Okay.
But you know, it all goes back to Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates, who've said these different things, but we're just putting them into modern terms, and that's how I would tell myself what all of that means is don't settle.
Okay. And I think that that's applied, you know, information for everybody else, myself included, who's watching or listening to this, is to not settle. And I do want to rebut that into, you know, previous conversations that I've heard you have about, you know, really looking at it for guilty by association. We're guilty by association in the top 5 personal or professional people we have in our lives, and that's kind of who we become. But those expectations or those limitations, they tend to be set inside, right? Through our environment, through what our mind blocks us, and that goes back to your inspiration of mindset, right? So would you mind, you know, kind of sharing a little bit of your thoughts on that and not limiting yourself, right? So in your own mind, because you have your mindset, how would other people try to reflect or practice that, what you're speaking of?
Well, there's, you know, when you look at the bar, getting over the proverbial bar in life, okay? What are our capabilities? What are our limitations? And there's 2 ways that you can look at the bar in life.
Yeah.
One is you can allow other people to set the bar for you, or you can set the bar yourself.
Okay.
So I believe that I will always set the bar higher than the people around me will set it.
Wow.
And what you need to do is you need to find people around you that set the bar really freaking high. Okay?
So true.
So that's the bottom of what you're going for. So, I mean, you know, and that goes back to another Jim Rohn type situation.
Right.
I think, you know, Zig Ziglar also had some fingers in this whole thought process also of the people around you are the ones who determine the level that you perform at. Right. It's absolutely true. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Choose wisely.
Well said. I agree with that 100%. And I know that there's a lot of top, you know, thought leaders, professionals in any field that feel that same way. And I love that, just to be reiterated, because sometimes we have certain conversations with professionals, as you know, but it takes that one person to say it a little different, or that right time in your life where somebody said it and you heard it or watched it and it was like, that's it, Adam said that. It finally hit. Kind of like when you're reading a book the first time, you get something out of it. Right. A year goes by, you read it again. You're in a different thought process in your mind. You're evolving as a person, and hopefully you're picking and choosing those different things. And a lot of that is what you just said there. So hopefully everybody's really absorbing this and feeling this energy from Adam, because this is fantastic. You know, we could keep going on and on and on about when it comes down to this. But for time's sake and everybody, I just want to keep moving forward with this. And this is actually a crowd pleaser, this next question. When it comes down to it, everybody wants to know what the Titans are feeding their minds, how they're growing. Right? So, and there's a lot. I know you're an avid reader. You come down to it, but books you're reading, podcasts you're listening to, influencers on social media. What are you feeding your mind, Adam?
Okay, so what I'm feeding my mind is just as important as what I'm not feeding my mind.
Love it.
Okay? Let me briefly tell you what I'm not feeding my mind.
Sure.
Okay? I've gone in and limited my social media consumption. Sorry, social media team.
That's okay.
But I've
Kayla's amazing.
yeah, Kayla's awesome. Adam Contos, CEO on Facebook. But I've limited what I feed myself on social media because you start getting down into the judgy type statements that we've heard people or terms like troll and things like that. I have literally seen people in the real estate industry calling each other bad words on social media, and I'm going, time out, people. Don't get into that space because all you're doing is you're dragging everybody down with you.
Well said.
So, I mean, it happens. It's turned into a place where you don't want to go, okay? So don't feed yourself negativity. Also, don't feed yourself sensationalism. Don't feed yourself the news. I don't watch TV, by the way.
Okay.
I don't even binge on Netflix. I have not watched Game of Thrones. I have not watched any of these other Netflix shows. I'm sorry, everybody out there.
I haven't seen a single episode. There's probably going to be a lot of people hating on me right now, but I have not seen a single episode of Game of Thrones.
Okay, so I haven't watched any of that stuff. Why? Because it interferes with my ability to really go out and consume those other things that I love. So I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Love it.
I like business podcasts, I like motivational podcasts. I love marketing podcasts. I'll tell you why here in a second.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything from like duct tape marketing to the social media podcasts that are out there. There's like half a dozen of them.
Sure.
Of course, Start With a Win is off the charts.
He's not just saying this. I mean, I already said it, and I mean that. But before you keep going, though, Adam, with the books and influencers, things like that, can you really, from your own words, let everybody know about the podcast, why you started it, and really why people should be subscribing to this? Not just off of my recommendation, but through your words.
So probably 3 or 4 years ago, I went to I started listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
And I was kind of an early adopter in the whole podcast thing, listening to them, and I thought that's kind of cool. And I started looking into how easy is this to create, and I found I thought it was really difficult to create.
Sure.
So I mean, I was listening to like the podcast Answer Man, Cliff Ravenscraft. He doesn't call himself that anymore. I was listening to Social Media Marketing World, and I went to Social Media Marketing World's conference.
Oh, okay.
It was little bitty out in San Diego.
Yeah.
And Michael Stelzner, who's the guy that started the whole thing, grabbed me and he goes, "Hey, do you have a podcast?" And I go, "No." He goes, "You need to start one." I go, "Okay."
All right.
So this was like, I think 4 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I should have listened to him back then and started one back then. But hey, shoulda, woulda, coulda, right?
Hindsight's 20/20.
Didn't.
Right.
But I wanted to prove to myself that I could. And I sit at the dinner table with my family. I talk to my wife. I talk to my kids. And I'm spewing this stuff that I've read in books. And I'm going, I kind of like it. I want to listen to it instead of just say it. So I talked to my amazing social media team here. And we brought in a producer and started recording podcasts.
Love it.
And it's just kind of evolved since then. Needless to say, I now have my own podcasting equipment at home, and my kids are going, "Let's start a podcast." I'm going, "Yay, let's start a podcast." So
see what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's something everybody should try.
Agreed.
It's not hard. It sounds complicated, but it's actually not that difficult.
Right.
So I don't know why more people don't do it. 48 million people tune into podcasts every week.
Well said.
Hello.
Yeah.
I mean, your customers are on there, your friends are on there. Why don't you be on there? So so that's what I started. But back to the question.
Yeah, no, and I love that. And again, take a look at it. iTunes. I mean, I'm assuming iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, the whole nine.
Yeah.
So books and other influencers, things like that.
Okay, so I mentioned listening to podcasts about marketing. So I'm infatuated with social psychology. Okay? So why do you say what you say? Why do you do what you do? I think some of it had to do with kind of my infatuation with criminal psychology. I loved playing the game with bad guys when I was a cop.
Right.
Why do most people turn right when they're running from you? Well, it's because they're right-handed. Things like that. Trying to get into those little why games. Why is this person doing what they're doing, and what are they going to do next? I love it. I like the human emotion. Your body can't lie for your heart and your brain. So your emotions will translate to your actions. I love all those different concepts. So I like, why do people buy what they buy? Why do they say what they say? Why do they listen to what they listen to? Why do they read what they read? And it comes down to psychology. So I like the books by Dr. Robert Cialdini.
Okay.
So he had one called Influence, which is like 6 factors of influence that really played into a lot of marketing concepts. And I go back and I reread these books.
Love it.
Because if you go read like 100 books in a year, you're not going to get anything out of it.
It's tough.
But
It
if you
really
go
is.
read 10 books 30 times, you are gonna know what's in those books.
Well said.
Next thing is to apply it. So I've also read his second book, Persuasion. James Clear just wrote a book, it came out in October, called Atomic Habits, which is really good. And that goes back and it cites a lot of different books about, well, habits,
Right.
for lack of a better term. But there's another book, slips my mind, Baumeister's the guy that wrote it. It's about habits and why we do what we do, things like that. And he has a bunch of different concepts in there. So I like those. I love, and a big shout out to Darren Hardy, a friend of mine, great guy. I've been masterminding with him for 4 or 5 years, attending his events. He has a book called The Compound Effect.
Love it.
And the compound effect means a lot because it's about doing the little things repeatedly every single day that, like compounding interest.
Sure.
Those things compound over time to create success.
Right.
Like if you do your push-ups every day, you're going to get strong. So, if you eat healthy every day, you're going to get healthy.
Right.
If you, eat poorly every day, you're going to, your health is gone. Yeah, exactly. So, you save a little bit of money every day, you're going to grow wealth, things like that. So the compound effect, it clearly defines that. That's, I think, one of the key books.
Okay.
I actually had my kids read that.
Love that.
So those are about it.
Okay. I mean, and there's a lot in there for sure. I mean, and what I love about how you're really feeding your mind and growing is it's continuous, right? And that's set out there, but different medias. From physical books to audiobooks or podcasts, into that YouTube is a great place to go for content information.
Yep.
So I love the fact that you're constantly growing, and then also a part of that too, and a lot of Titans on this series, learning from your peers, right, and seeing what's going on and perspective, I think is wonderful. Getting outside of our bubble and really seeing what's out there. Obviously, you do on a large scale, right? We're talking worldwide here, so I think that's huge for everybody who's a part of this organization and represents into that. Just as everybody knows, as always, I'm going to have links in the comments down below so that you can follow and feed your mind the same way that this man is, which I really, really love that to do, really engage with everybody. So, Adam, this has been chock full of crazy good information, takeaways, nuggets, really a deeper knowledge into who you are as a man, which I think is fantastic. I really want to wrap everything up with a final question.
Okay.
And this comes down to a quote or a mantra that you live by that sums you up as a man, as a professional. What's that look like for Adam Contos? That's
an easy one. Okay. So Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit."
Love that.
That's what I think about all the time.
That's such a good one, and I absolutely love that quote. I don't have the card case on me, but I have that engraved in my card case.
Oh wow!
It literally is truth, and it's very continuous into what you have said and stated throughout your entire interview is consistency and doing the right things the right way and representing the industry and a brand to a higher standard. And I think that's beautiful, Adam. I mean, everybody can see that, and hopefully you really understood this. So I just want to thank you again for taking the time, Adam. I know you're super busy. You're an official real estate titan, my friend. So,
thank you, Greg.
Yeah, thank you so much. And everybody, as always, thank you so much for your time and attention, your love and support. If you like what we're doing here with Real Estate Titans, don't forget to subscribe to YouTube. Take us out at Twitter, Instagram, those sorts of things. And also the podcast format on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcast. Live every Tuesday and Friday afternoon, a different Titan, a different location. And we'll catch everybody on the next live episode of Real Estate Titans. Take care. And we are almost